The rain came down in sheets that November evening, turning the downtown streets into rivers of reflected neon and despair. Sarah Mitchell stood beneath the awning of a closed bookstore, watching a woman in a tattered coat dig through a trash bin across the street. Something about the woman's careful, methodical movements, the way she smoothed out a crumpled paper bag before placing it in her shopping cart, made Sarah's throat tighten. The woman looked up, and for one suspended moment, their eyes met. In that instant, Sarah saw something she'd been running from her entire life, herself, or rather, who she could have been, who she still might become if she wasn't careful. Sarah had been on top of the world just 6 months ago, vice president of marketing at a prestigious firm, penthouse apartment with a view of the city skyline, closet full of designer clothes she'd only worn once. She had it all, or so everyone told her. But having it all meant nothing when her company downsized, when her so-called friends stopped returning calls, when the bills piled up faster than her severance pay could cover. 3 months behind on rent, eviction notice taped to her door. Pride swallowed. She'd started sleeping in her car 2 weeks ago. The woman across the street moved on, pushing her cart down the sidewalk with a dignity that seemed impossible given her circumstances. Sarah felt the weight of her laptop bag on her shoulder, her last valuable possession besides her car. She'd been on her way to sell it, had found a buyer online willing to pay cash. But now, watching the woman disappear into the rainy darkness, something shifted inside her. She crossed the street, rain soaking through her worn blazer, and followed. The woman turned into an alley behind a Vietnamese restaurant, where the smell of pho and garlic filled the air despite the cold. She parked her cart beside a dumpster and pulled out the paper bag she'd saved, carefully spreading it on the wet ground as if it were a picnic blanket. Then she sat down, pulled her coat tighter, and closed her eyes. "Excuse me," Sarah said softly, approaching slowly so as not to startle her. The woman's eyes opened, alert but not afraid. Up close, Sarah could see she was younger than she'd first appeared, maybe 50, with gray streaking through dark hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of hard years. "I don't want any trouble," the woman said. "Neither do I." Sarah crouched down, ignoring the water seeping through her pants. "I'm Sarah, what's your name?" The woman studied her for a long moment. "Most people don't ask. They look through me like I'm invisible." "I know the feeling," Sarah said, and meant it. "I've been sleeping in my car for 2 weeks. Lost my job, my apartment. I'm supposed to be selling my laptop right now so I can eat tomorrow." Something changed in the woman's face. A softening, a recognition. "Margaret," she finally said. "My name is Margaret Chen. I was a teacher once." "Can you believe that?" 10th grade English. Had a classroom full of kids who called me Mrs. Chen and actually listened when I talked about Shakespeare and Steinbeck. Sarah settled onto the wet ground beside her. "What happened?" Margaret's laugh was hollow. "The usual story. Husband died. Medical bills. I had to choose between the mortgage and his cancer treatments. Chose him, of course. He died anyway. Lost the house, then my job because I couldn't stop falling apart. My daughter," her voice cracked. "My daughter stopped taking my calls after I asked to borrow money for the 3rd time. Said I was embarrassing her. That was 4 years ago." They sat in silence, 2 women in an alley behind a restaurant, rain drumming on the dumpster above them. Sarah thought about her own mother, who'd called her twice this week. She hadn't answered, too ashamed to admit she was homeless, too proud to ask for help. "I was going to sell my laptop," Sarah said quietly, "but I have a different idea. If you'll let me." Over the next hour, huddled in that alley with Margaret's shopping cart providing meager shelter, Sarah opened her laptop and typed while Margaret talked. She wrote down Margaret's story, not the tragic parts, though those were there, but the human parts. The way she'd once directed her, school's production of To Kill a Mockingbird, and cried at the standing ovation. How she'd volunteered at the library every Saturday, helping kids learn to love reading. The former student who'd become a doctor and credited Margaret with believing in her when no one else did. "What are you doing?" Margaret asked, watching the words appear on screen. "Starting something," Sarah said. "I still have my social media accounts. 50,000 followers from my old marketing life. Most of them probably forgot I exist, but maybe some will remember. Maybe some will care." She titled the post Her and wrote, I met a woman tonight. Her name is Margaret Chen, and she taught your children, or someone's children, to love reading. She directed school plays. She volunteered at libraries. She held her husband's hand through cancer treatments until their money ran out, then held it still until he took his last breath. Now she sleeps behind a Vietnamese restaurant in the rain. This is her. This is us. This is what we've become. A society that lets our teachers end up homeless while we scroll past on our phones. I'm starting a GoFundMe for Margaret tonight. But more than that, I'm asking you to see her. Really see her. Because I promise you, if you look close enough, you'll see yourself. She posted it with a photo, not of Margaret, who shook her head when Sarah asked, but of the empty alley, the overturned shopping cart, the paper bag spread like a makeshift shelter. Then she created the GoFundMe page, setting a modest goal of $5,000, enough for first and last month's rent somewhere. A fresh start. It won't work, Margaret said, but there was hope in her voice. A tiny, fragile hope that broke Sarah's heart. Maybe not, Sarah admitted, but I have to try. For you, for me, for everyone who's one disaster away from this. They exchanged phone numbers. Margaret borrowed phones at the library twice a week, and Sarah promised to check in the next day. As she walked back to her car, laptop bag heavier than ever with the weight of not selling it, she felt something she hadn't felt in months, purpose. She checked her phone obsessively that night, curled up in her back seat with a blanket pulled to her chin. $10, $25, $50. The donations trickled in slowly, accompanied by comments. I had a teacher like this once. This could be any of us. Thank you for seeing her. By morning, groggy and stiff from sleeping in the car, Sarah saw the number had hit $300. Respectable, but nowhere near enough. She drove to the library where Margaret had said she'd be and found her in the computer lab, teaching an elderly man how to use email. I was a teacher, Margaret said with a shy smile when she saw Sarah. Hard habit to break. Sarah showed her the GoFundMe. Margaret's eyes welled up. 300 people cared enough to give. 312 now, Sarah said, refreshing the page. But it was that afternoon when everything changed. Sarah got a notification that someone had shared her post. Then another. Then another. By evening, her phone was on fire with notifications. Someone had tagged a local news station. A reporter wanted an interview. The GoFundMe had crossed $10,000. This is insane, Sarah breathed, watching the number climb. By the next day, it had hit 50,000. The local news ran the story. Former marketing executive helps homeless teacher, and suddenly everyone wanted to talk to them. National morning shows, podcasts, magazine articles. But it wasn't just Margaret's story anymore. Other people started sharing their own. A veteran sleeping in his truck, a woman who'd lost everything in a fire, a young man aging out of foster care with nowhere to go. Sarah watched it all unfold with a mixture of awe and heartbreak. Margaret's GoFundMe eventually topped $200,000, far more than either of them had dreamed. But Sarah didn't stop there. She used her marketing skills, rusty but still sharp, to create a nonprofit. She called it Her, simple, direct, powerful. A reminder that every homeless person was someone's mother. Sister, daughter, teacher, friend. Margaret became the organization's first client, and eventually its spokesperson. Her natural warmth and intelligence shining through in interviews. Within 6 months, they'd helped 37 people find housing. Within a year, 300. Companies that had ignored Sarah's job applications suddenly wanted her expertise. But she'd found her calling. This work that mattered more than any corner office ever had. 3 years later, Sarah stood on a stage accepting an award for Her, which had grown to operate in 12 cities. Margaret sat in the front row, wearing a dress Sarah had helped her pick out, tears streaming down her face. They'd found Margaret's daughter through Facebook, a reconciliation that had been rocky at first but was growing stronger. Margaret was teaching again, too, volunteering at an alternative high school for at-risk youth. In her acceptance speech, Sarah said, 3 years ago, I met a woman in an alley. I was going to walk past her like so many others had, like I had walked past people before. But something made me stop. Something made me see her, really see her. And in seeing her, I saw myself, I saw us. All of us, one catastrophe away from losing everything. But I also saw something else, the power of caring enough to stop. To ask someone's name, to hear their story, to say you matter in whatever way we can. She paused, scanning the audience. We called the organization Her because that's what people said when they walked past Margaret. Her as if she were invisible, less than human. But now when I say her, I mean something different. I mean the woman who survived, who endured, who taught me that kindness isn't about having everything. It's about giving what you can when you have nothing left. After the ceremony, Margaret hugged Sarah tight. You saved my life, she whispered. No, Sarah whispered back, her own tears flowing freely now. You saved mine. You reminded me what it means to be human. Outside, the city hummed with life. People rushing past each other, eyes on their phones, lost in their own worlds. But somewhere in that crowd, Sarah knew someone would stop. Someone would see someone else and really see them. Someone would ask a name, hear a story, extend a hand. Because that's what humans do when they remember they're human. And it always starts with one person choosing to care. Choosing to see her,